Hey, Jesus said in Matthew 5:19, do and teach God's law. This is God's law number 28, cities of refuge. Hello, everybody. I'm Jim McCotter. Welcome. Here is God's law number 28 from God's law book of Deuteronomy in Deuteronomy chapter 19, verses 2 through 13. Quote, set apart cities of refuge in the land, with one of these cities in each district. Then if someone kills another person unintentionally without previous hostility, the slayer may flee to any of these cities and live safely. Otherwise, the avenger of blood might pursue him in the heat of his anger and overtake him if the distance is too far, and take his life, though he was not deserving of death, since he had not hated him previously. That is why I'm commanding you to set aside these cities of refuge. That way, you will prevent the death of innocent people, and you will not be held responsible for the death of innocent people. But what if out of hate someone lies in wait, assaults and kills someone, and then flees to one of these cities of refuge? In that case, the elder judges of the murderer's hometown must send agents to the city of refuge to bring him back and hand him over to the dead person's avenger to be put to death. Do not feel sorry for that murderer. Purge from the nation the guilt of murdering innocent people, then all will go well in the nation. End quote. This law prevents a nation from needing to have any prisons. However, if other parts of God's law are ignored, especially God's law relating to being just, witness perjury, defying a judge's order, or not swift executions, this law may break down. Law is like a stone dam. Remove one part or more stones from a dam, and the whole dam may break down. One of the worst injustices in America is for murderers to spend years on, quote, death row. Solomon said in Ecclesiastes 8, verse 11, quote, when a crime is not punished quickly, people feel it is safe to do wrong, end quote. But only when a nation follows God's law will it, quote, purge from the nation the guilt of murdering innocent people, end quote. And only, quote, then all will go well in the nation, end quote. Holding murderers on death row for years, or worse yet for life, is not purging a nation for corrupting, but rather corrupting a nation. And God says all will not go well in that nation. Moreover, it is not being just for the innocent population, much less the victim's family, to have to pay for guarding and providing for all murderers' living expenses thereafter, as such in prisons. Now look at the above law. This law indicates if anyone kills someone unintentionally or not, they must flee to the city of refuge to be safe. The law permits any and all avengers of blood to put to death the killer unless he is in a city of refuge. Therefore, be sure every innocent person who unintentionally killed someone would immediately flee to the city of refuge to await trial. If someone is guilty of murder, he might not flee to a city of refuge to be tried. He may flee to another country, and the nation would then be rid of the murderer. For if he remains in that country, any and all avengers are legally free to put him to death. Moreover, this is one of many scriptures affirming liberty for all people to own a weapon and even to help carry out what is lawful in God's law. A murderer is not likely to survive long in any godly city. In the Old West, no horse thief could even hide for long. Genesis 9:6 says, if anyone takes a human life, people should take that person's life. For God made human beings in his own image. Proverbs 28:17 says, a murderer's tormented conscience will drive him into the grave. Don't protect him. Now, in Numbers 35 gives additional details on this subject. We will summarize some of them here. A person declared innocent after trial is still to remain in the city of refuge for a period of time. These cities were not unlike any other towns in which to live. In the case of a murder trial, After a thorough investigation, an assembly of local people determined the verdict and not a judge. However, if there are credible witnesses, at least, quote, 2 or 3 witnesses, that alone is necessary and sufficient for putting a murderer to death. All convicted murderers must be swiftly put to death. There can be no exceptions, or the land will be polluted. Numbers 35 verse 33 says, quote, "This will ensure that the land where you live will not be polluted, for murder pollutes the land. And no sacrifice except the execution of the murderer can purify the land from murder." End quote. The Apostle Paul gives the same injunction for biblical government. Quote, "For your good they execute evil." Quote, end quote, in Romans 13:4, referring to civil authority. And the verse specifically says, "For the one in authority is God's servant for your good. For rulers do not bear the sword for no reason. They are God's servants, to execute wrath upon him that does evil." End quote. The only reason for a sword is to continually put to death evil people.